made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession on the world's #1 chiropractic podcast. Before we dive into this powerful episode, please remember to subscribe to our channel and give us a 5-star rating on iTunes and continue hustling. This episode is sponsored by Imaging Services, Chiro Health USA, Chiro Moguls, Chiropractic Rocks, Pure Chiro Notes, Titronics, doTERRA, Sherman College of Chiropractic, New Patients in a Box, the Influencer Authority Podcast Training, and Prime Spine Consulting. Let's hustle.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 334 of the Chiro Hustle podcast. I'm your co-host, Luke Millette, and here's your host, Jim Chester.
So today we had the opportunity of interviewing Dr. Nathan Gerowitz, and if you want to hear about Nicaragua, Peru, Brazil, Chicago, and letters to our younger selves, stay tuned. Welcome back, episode 334. Nathan Gerowitz here coming in from the Chicagoland area. My co-host Luke Millette coming in from Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I'm seated today in beautiful Grand Junction, Colorado. Really excited for this episode, but before we jump into it, I'm just going to set some foundation for what we do and why we do what we do. We do protect free speech and chiropractic on Chiro Hustle. We do support subluxation based chiropractors and the terminology of innate intelligence, which sometimes becomes a little challenging for the future of chiropractic. So we just want to stay fundamental with those. And if you want to go a little bit deeper fundamentally, go check out what protecting the sacred trust means. If you don't know what that means, that's why we do what we do, is because Chiro Hustle does protect the sacred trust. And I think those are fundamentals that I'm really proud of what we do. And honestly, when Luke and I first got into doing what we do, making documentaries and whatnot, by the way, if you guys want the documentaries, go to chirohustle.com, scroll to the bottom of the page, you can download the movies for free. But when Luke and I were doing that, I was like, dude, would the forefathers of chiropractic be proud of our work? That was the only thing that mattered to me. Plus, I wanted to set a reckoning for the public to see what we do. But I was like, would Reggie Gold be proud of this? Would Sid Williams be proud of this? Would the Palmers be proud of this? And that's why we do what we do, is because I think there is a sense of pride with telling the truth about chiropractic. And with that opener, Dr. Nathan, welcome to episode 334.
Great to be here. And I'm really grateful for what you guys do. I remember thinking in school at one point, like, man, if BJ was around, he would have podcasts. He would have 17 YouTube channels. He would have all these things. And he was brilliant at marketing and brilliant at the business end of things. So I'm really grateful that you guys have carried that torch forward from him with the first radio station west of the Mississippi to now Chiro Hustle, learning from the greats.
Well, do you know that he did spark the career of Ronald Reagan?
Yeah. He was one of his first DJs. He did, and he did sports announcing too.
Yeah. It's fascinating that guy went on to become a president of our country, and he had chiropractic fundamentals in him.
Yeah, somewhere in there. Yeah.
So let's open this one up. What's changed since last time we chatted? I know we were pre-chatting about this episode, and we said that it's been maybe about a year since we've come on, and we were talking about some of the other MLS notables that have been on the show recently. Shout out to all of those guys, Gabby, and connected with Wade at Mile High, and Zach. So thanks for being a part of such a great group of people that are doing great things for chiropractic. But catching up, what's new in your world?
Well, on the personal end of things, since last time I got engaged, which was so much fun and such an amazing experience.
Congrats!
And she said yes, which was I don't know. I was having this funny chat with a friend of mine where planning the proposal. You know how what you're going to say in the middle. You know how it's going to end. You know it's going to end with "Will you marry me?" It's easing into the conversation, like, what's the segue? And I'm like, oh, there's no way to plan that. I'll just have to work with what we're talking about at the time. But I also had a book come out last year. I think we were right at the end of editing it the last time I was here. So I'm happy to get into that a little bit.
Yeah.
And on that, just really doing my best to live in a state of trust, which, depending on the day, is not always the easiest, and to really allow, really, again, continuing to work on loving myself, because the greater any of us are at that, the more we're able to share that with others. And I'm happy to get into that conversation too.
Yeah. Well, first of all, congrats.
Thank you.
Luke and I are taking notes on what to say. So make sure that we stay in touch. So when Luke and I are ready for those types of questions, we know what goes into the middle.
Happy to help. Happy to help.
Yeah, kick right into it, man. Tell us about this book.
Sure. So it is called Letters to Our Younger Selves, a combat manual for mindful living. We had a lot of fun coming up with the title, but it started because several times in my life, I've done service trips, mission trips, some chiropractic, some not. One of the most impactful and profound ones was in my undergrad experience. I went to Nicaragua. And when I got back, with some friends and professors on the trip and some water engineers we all got hooked up with, a nonprofit was created. But I got to go back twice to go there as a chiropractor, because when first time I went, I was just an undergrad student, and they were always very adamant, like, "Hey, if you go on to anything in the healthcare world, we'll come back with us." 2 years ago, in January of 2020, I was in Nicaragua, and I was with one of my mentors in the field. Our mentors from undergrad, his name's Paul Martino. He's a physiologist. And we just kept agreeing on everything. Like, you ever just with someone and like anything you guys talk about, you guys are in just complete agreement with it. And we kept, I thought, joking at the time, well, we should write a book, or we should do something together. Like, we should write a book. And when I got back, a couple months after January of 2020, we had a lot of time on our hands. And so he and I and another physiologist up at Carthage College in Kenosha, Wisconsin, teamed up and wrote this book. And we wanted to figure out, how do we share some of the lessons that we've learned throughout our lives in a way that we could also joke about it. We could also, like, in a way that was hopefully entertaining. And so we decided to write them as letters to ourselves, with the major premise of this book being, if you could write a letter through time to you, what would you want to say? What would you want to go over? What would you want to talk about? What would you want to tell you, to maybe not prevent some of the unique experiences that have happened, but maybe shorten the learning, shorten the gap, like, help it be an easier learning curve. And it was really fun, kind of going through that process and getting it published. And so it's on Amazon, it's on Barnes and Noble, it's on there's a website we have for it, and it's really cool. And so Paul's chapters really focus on the lessons he learned being the son of two immigrants, and Justin's really focus on what are the lessons you can gain from failure, and how is failure really important and actually a good thing. And then mine tend to focus on, go figure, health, healing, wellness, well-being, definite splashes of spirituality in there throughout, but really in a palatable way. And the whole thing we wrote in such a way that you could read it from, if you had a flight from Chicago to LA, you'd be done by the time you hit the tarmac.
So, how exactly are you marketing this book? I know it's on Amazon, but how are you like actively promoting it?
It's a great question, and we're still kind of working that out. We're building sort of a social media presence. We're all doing podcasts, which has been a lot of fun to do. Which is not why I'm here. It just is a nice bonus. But so podcast, we've really enjoyed getting on podcasts. There's, I'm sure, a website that you guys are familiar with called Matchmaker, where you can go and find podcasters can find people who want to be on podcasts. And so that's been a lot of fun. And in my office, it's really easy, because I just have it sitting right on the front counter. People ask me about it, and so I sell it in the office too. It's the only technical product that I sell in the office, besides the chiropractic service.
And let's go back to these mission trips for a quick second.
Happy to.
How have doing these trips like changed your perception of the world?
How much time do we have?
You have
So
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay. So I'm glad I had some coffee beforehand. So i- it's so hard for me to think about who I would be without having gone on all of them. partly because it just opened my eyes to a whole other part of the world that I would never otherwise see. The mission trips I've gone on have been to Nicaragua, Peru, and Brazil. Peru and Brazil both once, Nicaragua 3 times, and just getting to see completely different cultures, and especially where I was, particular in Nicaragua, is complete. What if you think of third world poverty? That's where we were, and some of the and getting to see that and really live in that for a while. Like we were like in Nicaragua, we're not staying in 5-star hotels when we're on this island. It's we're there. So getting to experience that, B, getting to meet all of the people along the way, whether that's the Nicaraguan medical doctors that I was serving alongside of, like they were doing their thing, I was doing my thing, whether that's the people who run the finca or the property that we were at, and just all of the people that I got to serve, and meeting people. One of the things that I really took away, especially the first time I went back in 2011, so somehow, or no, pardon me, 2010, so somehow 11 years ago, how the immense gratitude everyone I talked to had, not only for us being there, just for life in general, for being alive and being here and getting to be alive that day and getting to go on for another day, was just so infectious. Like we all, it like imbued in me a deep sense of that somewhere in my subconscious and unconscious, which was just so beautiful. And then you layer on getting to go back as a chiropractor for 4 of these trips to Peru, Brazil, and Nicaragua, and getting to serve people in this way that I've been training for so long, where you don't have, like, I didn't have my thermal scanner, I didn't have HRV, I didn't have X-rays, I didn't have, I didn't have an arthrostem, which all of which I use and I love and are phenomenal tools. Really getting to see a table, usually a table, not always, but my table, my hands, my heart, my intuition, my mind, and my willingness to really lean in. And when I went in 2020, the first time I went back to Nicaragua, I was with two of my best friends from college became physician's assistants. So we went back together, and one of their wives came too. So she was kind of running we called it the GPS clinic for our last names, guiding you to better health. So they were doing their thing, I was doing my thing, and my friend's wife was running, like she was kind of maneuvering traffic around this room that we were in. I went back the following year, they weren't there, and it was like, oh wow, I'm actually like kind of nervous about this. And I had this really beautiful moment the night before I started serving people. Like I go with the undergrad school, so they're all doing class. Like all the undergrad students are doing class. And I'm just kind of sitting in the space that I know I'll be serving the next day. Like, what if I just trust Nate for the next week? What if? What would happen? And it was so beautiful. And it's the gift that has kept on giving, really, especially since January of 2020. In the last 2 years, it's been an endless version of that question. Like, how do I trust myself? How do I trust what's going on? How do I trust the universe while still doing my best to tip the scales a little bit and shift things into a greater state of wholeness? I think that was about 5 minutes.
That is perfect.
So quick question.
Sir.
This is off chiropractic.
Okay.
Because you mentioned Nicaragua, Peru, Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the best cup of coffee?
I love Nicaraguan coffee. I just do. And it may have been because I drank it when I was there initially. And that was such a profound impact on my life. But I love Nicaraguan coffee so much. Peru and Brazil coffees were both amazing too. I just have to be mindful of not drinking too much of it. I don't know if you can tell that from the everything about me, but a little too much coffee, I start talking about 10 miles a minute as opposed to 5. I think I'm doing right now.
Well, you're keeping good pace with us, so we appreciate it.
Anytime.
Yeah, and we've all gone through a huge transition for the past 655 days.
I don't know how many days it was, but wow.
Yeah. It's profound that we've all been in this here's the deal, here's not the deal, here's the deal, here's not the deal type mindset. And we've had to go back and forth on our own ideas. And I've spoken to a lot of people recently about situations familially where just people are just really strange now. Mental health, I think it's one of the biggest challenges, and that's something that really I think people should discuss when it comes to chiropractic. That chiropractic doesn't just help with the physical, it helps with the spiritual, it helps with the mental. And that's something I really believe that a lot of times we don't really discuss. We talk about the miracle of chiropractic and sometimes what it does for people,
Mhm.
but we don't really discuss that. We're in a really strange place with people becoming an emotional self outside of their physical self, controlling their physical self. And it's something that I think that it's very much chiropractic conversation.
Mhm. I agree.
Um, what are you doing to keep yourself healthy during this past 655 days that we've all been enduring and living through?
Number one, I drink a lot of water. So like just to make life, just to make like we'll start physical and we can build. But like this is the water bottle I brought this morning. So um, like I am my man. You have the cool stickers on it.
You got Luke's too.
Yeah. So I think I tell people, and I wrote about this in the book, like how underutilized drinking water is. And it's always funny. I'm sure some of the chiropractors listening can relate. You have people who come in and they're like, I don't like the taste of water. And I've tried putting stuff in it and I've tried like putting lemons in it. And I'm like, okay, well, which do you hate more? How you're currently feeling and moving through life or the taste of water? I'd pick the water to drink. Um, and so that's one. I have to say that getting adjusted regularly is, as I'm sure for you too, and I'm sure for many people who listen to this, is one of my primary, if not the primary strategies I use. It's to keep me in a more adaptable state, to keep me in a centered, grounded, connected, balanced state where I can allow my gifts to come through. And it's been really important for my emotional, mental, spiritual levels of myself, and not to mention my personality slash ego. Like all of those things are real levels of who we are, and we can. You kind of mentioned it briefly. I'm happy to go down this rabbit hole of what does getting adjusted do for each of them, and but that's one of the primary ways. And one of the other things is me and my friends check in on each other a lot. I have a coach that I work with who I know Pam Jarbo, who is amazing. And so many times, in the last couple of years, I've called her and it has not been a conversation like, well, what are your numbers doing this month? Or what new marketing thing? It's like, how do we stay in alignment with ourselves, in alignment with our potential, in alignment with who we really are? And the analogy that I've used for 2 years is that the waves are kind of rocky right now, and a lot of people are getting thrashed about whether they depend, regardless of of which end of the spectrum of the ideologies they're on. It's very stressful. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The waves are really thrashy. Some are learning how to surf. I wanted, especially my office and me as best as I could, to be a lighthouse. And that's what I've done my best to do. So it's how do I keep myself there? Because whether you are, regardless of which of those ends of the spectrum you're on, very easy to get lost in fear. It's very easy. And another word for fear is stress. Stress is just it's the word we use to make ourselves feel better about fear. But that's what it is, and it has a really important place. Like fear is a very important emotion to feel. But like any emotion, you don't want to get lost in it or only run that.
You've made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession on the world's #1 chiropractic podcast. This episode is sponsored by Imaging Services, Chiro Health USA, Chiro Moguls, Chiropractic Rocks, Pure Chiro Notes, Titronics, doTERRA, Sherman College of Chiropractic, New Patients in a Box, the Influencer Authority Podcast Training, and Prime Spine Consulting. Let's hustle. Well, I've noticed, Doc, that people have become super sticky with stress because each day they get presented with a new stressor that they didn't never have to deal with before. And we're definitely we're on an unlevel ground right now with the way that people are feeling. Like I said earlier, when I asked you what you're doing for your health, and I think it's awesome, man. I think most people are well dehydrated and they're not taking care of their body and flushing out the cells of their body, which is necessary, and keeping themselves hydrated keeps the cell healthy. And so many people don't know that. And, I was talking to a friend last night about the tone of people's bodies. And when they don't get enough hydration into their body, they have a lower tone of vitality, and they're just drying up. And, I had that talk, but I think you said something also about you getting adjusted with something that you do to keep yourself healthy. And I think that we can't not talk about that a little bit more, because the adjustment is an essential part. And I know Luke, he's wearing this men's group together, and Luke sometimes posts like revelations that he has, and I do too. It's a part of our work. But he posted in there recently that he got somebody that was unaware of chiropractic, what it could do for them, and got them to get adjusted. And I think that that's really positive and powerful, and it's notable. And I think that it's the start to somebody getting that shift.
Mhm.
And
Should we dive into that for a minute?
yeah, let's talk about that.
Okay. I think it may be helpful, especially if there are listeners who aren't chiropractors, if we start with where does like the subluxating process and then the adjusting process. Is that cool with you guys? Is that all right? So when we have an experience that is new, our body, our nervous system has one of two options. Either A, it can be something that we've experienced, it can learn from it, grow from it, move through it. And from a philosophical standpoint, a lot of what I'm about to say comes from Sue Brown's work. If anyone is unfamiliar, I cannot recommend looking up her work enough. So the experience comes in, it's new, but our body is able to move through it. It's able to learn from it. It's able to glean the information that is necessary for our continued evolution and growth. And then more of the infinite intelligence within us gets activated. Does that make sense? So pretty straightforward. Option two is we cannot move through it. It is stressful, traumatic. It's an injury. It's overwhelming. Not necessarily because that particular event may be stressful, traumatic, or overwhelming, but because of everything else going on in our life, we don't have the bandwidth. So our body goes, great. There is good information in this. We just can't deal with it right now. We have hit capacity for Tuesday. And so it will store up that information, translation, energy, frequency, tone, vibration, all of that in the big matrix that we are. So it will store that energy up, bind it in the system, and the subluxation is born. Now, most often that exists in the neurospinal system between our brain and our tailbone. And it's used like a big fuse box. We all have fuse boxes in our homes. That's what it's used like. So just to make it a really simple analogy, and it's all bound up energy in the system that carries with it information, downloads, activations for whatever that experience was. When that happens at a physiological level, the brain and body do not communicate properly. It's creating chaos in the body. Then at the brain level, the brain can get pulled out of balance. I know you guys are familiar with Pete Goldman and his work about balancing the brain and the body, which is amazing work that I also use here. And the brain can itself be pulled out of balance. And this is all just at a physiological level. Meanwhile, the joints don't move properly. The muscles, tendons, ligaments, fascia all can get twisted, torqued, abnormally tight. And then we don't move properly. And then that can diminish the vitality in our body, affecting either our musculoskeletal system, digestive system, immune system, or any of the others, and usually all of them at once. At an emotional level, because there is that dissonance in the frequency, we don't have access. Because it's creating more chaos in our body. Emotionally, we become more reactive. And if you imagine a piano, like piano keys, from abject complete, here, I'll use this one, from abject complete failure all the way to pure bliss. That's the range of emotions. We can go up and down, and we're meant to play all of the keys. Now, some, like shame, for example, is meant to be just a stepping stone. Its only function, in my opinion, is to get you from the emotion below it to the emotion above it. That's its only job for shame. So And so what happens is, imagine just playing one chord on the piano. For most people, it ranges from, it usually includes fear, anger, numb, apathy, and occasionally you'll get mild interest. But it also creates us to be more reactive in our emotional minds. That's why most people have the emotional age of about a 2-year-old. And if you ever hang out with people who have that age, it will not take long before they throw a fit about something. It just looks different as an adult. In kids, we know exactly what that looks like. So it's a really easy indication that kids are subluxated. At a mental level, because our physiology is stuck in survival mode, our brain will kick in to deeper levels of survival thinking, where we start to have greater levels of discernment that is short term, really good, long term, not good, in terms of I got to look out for me and mine at best. It will also lock us in mental thought forms and patterns and belief systems. At a personality level, we can become disintegrated at that level of who we are. So instead of accessing the really powerful parts of our personality, the parts that really things flow in our lives really easily, we get really stuck in the parts that are really unhealthy. And I can go into a lot more detail, but just to keep it simple. Meanwhile, above all that, above those finite parts of us, is our soul going, hey, I orchestrated this all beautifully, and now like since we're not dealing with it, we don't get all those gifts, and so we got to start to keep recreating the lessons, and somewhere above that, the different levels of spirit are going. How do we interface with like we came here for this physical experience, to experience this finite, limited thing in our infinite nature, and we can't do that as well right now. Then that person goes to a chiropractor, and the chiropractic adjustment, by accessing the nervous system, which is where all of these different layers can interface with each other, things can start to shift. The tension can be relieved. The biology can start to go from survival mode to thrival mode. Our emotions we can actually process emotionally all the stuff that we couldn't the first time around. And we can run those emotions, not have them run us. And then we can have access to more of that range. Mentally, we can start to make new associations and distinctions and differentiations and get out of those belief systems. We can shift into a healthier version of our personality where we can bring those gifts that hang out at the level of our soul into this physical reality, where we can actually have those gifts that we came here to share shine through.
Yeah, it's a lot. If people want to think of this as non-vitalistic, they can think of it as mechanistic. And mechanistic, they can think about it like a computer. They can think about defragging a computer and rebooting a computer and restarting, and the programs work better.
Mhm.
So, if people really want to think about the chiropractic adjustment, what it does on terms of a mechanistic system is computer reboot, defrag, restart, programs work better.
I love it.
Chiropractic speaking, vitalistic, organs work better, immune system gets stronger, nervous system functions the way it's supposed to, function mobility gets better, less pain response, more quality of life. Things just happen better for a person that's unsubluxated. So
Mhm.
that's the back and forth between vitalism, mechanism when it comes to a machine working, and chiropractic is not mechanistic, it's vitalistic, and it really sparks life into people and brings them back on. And I think that that's the really beautiful thing about the profession, and why the work that Luke and I have done for years now matters, because some people never hear this conversation. They'll
Mhm.
never hear a conversation like this.
And it's in my opinion, and from what I've seen, the conversation, it does not have to be to the depth that I just went into, is what people are craving. And whether they know it or not. This does not mean like this. Like I do not have only yogis and meditators come into my office. I've got the entire spectrum that comes in. I'm really happy about that for my office. Doesn't matter how do I help people really connect into all that depth of who they are, because whether you are a religious person, a spiritual person, an atheist, agnostic, regardless of where you fall in there, I think it's very easy to look at life as a miracle and look at every person we interact with as a miracle, whether that is because they were divinely created or because, like, the scientific odds of us all being here together are pretty darn small. So hey, we won the lottery. Like, regardless of what we are, you are a miracle in motion, and the adjusting process allows that to really unfold, and for you to, dare I say, have a little bit more joy through that process. And whether that's with healing old deep wounds or accessing more of those gifts that you have. And that's why I think it's so critical and vital to have to continue to train in deeper levels of being able to serve people, both communication wise and in the adjusting process.
And with that, that just about brings us to the edge of our time together. Dr. Nathan, I want to thank you for being our guest today. Where can people buy the book? What are some of your websites?
Absolutely.
Instagram handle? What do you
Yep.
got?
So my Instagram handle and Facebook handle, so it's the same thing. It's Innate Life Chiro. Or on Instagram, it's at Innate Life Chiro. And the book is on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It's on our publisher is called Book Baby, which is kind of fun. I know this is going to be posted on Facebook, so I'll throw some links in the comments if that's okay. And my website is innatelifechiro.com. And I regularly play with Dr. Susan Rossi and her work, which you can find on Facebook as well. I'm also an instructor for MLS Seminars. So at the end, I was kind of briefly talking about training to deeper levels of being able to deliver that promise of chiropractic. And we have several different seminars coming, both some in Europe and quite a few in the States. In the next 6 months, we've got, I believe, 5 or 6 coming across the country. So you can hang with me and some of my friends there.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for being our guest today. This was a lot of fun. And really quickly, what's the name of the book? Did you mention it?
I did, and I'll show it.
Yeah.
I have it. So Letters to Our Younger Selves,
That's
a combat
right.
manual for mindful living.
Awesome. So
Yes, thank
everyone
you for asking.
get that book.
And
And
at least a third of it I really love. No, I'm kidding. The entire thing,
at least a third of it.
Yeah, but really the entire thing is fantastic and a very easy read that hopefully has, in its simplicity, has a lot of complex meaning and gifts.
Well, it's been really great to have this conversation with you today on all things chiropractic. Congrats on the engagement. Congrats on the book. It's really cool to have you on for episode 334. And I don't know if you knew this, but your name is in Innate.
I did know that. It's took me a while in going through chiropractic school to be like, can I use it? Is that too self-aggrandizing? And I'm like, that's really good branding.
You are Innate Life. So once again, we appreciate you being on as our guest today. Thank you for sharing so freely the knowledge that you have and the work that you do. And yeah, it's been a great episode.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you both for having me. Would love to play again soon. And I really appreciate all the work that you two do for chiropractic and for humanity.
Oh, thank you very much for the kind words. And with that, we want you to enjoy the rest of your afternoon. We'll see you.
All right, Doc. Thanks.
You good? Thank you, guys.
Thanks for listening to Chiro Hustle. Don't forget to subscribe and check back next week to continue hustling.